There comes a moment in every age when the veil between the natural and the eternal grows thin, when what was once hidden begins to be revealed, and when the winds of prophecy begin to roar with undeniable force. We are living in such a moment now. The hour is no longer near. It is upon us. The sound of the last trumpet is not merely imagined. It is echoing through the corridors of the heavens. And the last sign, the sign that confirms every harbinger, every warning, every mystery, is now before us. From ancient scrolls to modern signs, from the prophets of old to the shaking of the nations, we were told to watch. We were told to discern the times, to lift our eyes to the heavens, and to behold what others ignore. And now, in the final days before July 10, 2025, something has shifted. A marker has appeared not crafted by man, but permitted by God. A line has been drawn in the unseen realms, and it divides past from future, slumber from awakening, compromise from consecration. The world is too loud to hear it, too distracted to perceive it, and too numb to care. But the Spirit is still speaking. And to those who have ears to hear, this is the time to listen as never before. We are standing at the precipice of prophecy. The words of the prophets are no longer echoes from the past. They are headlines of today. The events unfolding across the earth are not random. They are calculated movements of divine alignment. A convergence has begun. Political unrest, moral collapse, shaking economies, heavenly signs, and the silencing of truth. All of it is not coincidence, but orchestration. And in the middle of it all, the final sign has now been revealed. The earth groans, the heavens declare, and time itself is leaning forward. What happens before this date, July 10, 2025, may seal destinies and complete a mystery that began in the garden. This is not just a message. It's a wake-up call, a trumpet blast not of metal, but of spirit. A voice crying out not in the wilderness, but into the depths of a sleeping church. The moment is urgent, the call is holy, and the time is now. This is not a sermon, it is an assignment. This is not motivation, it is mobilization. And for those who still believe, for those not ashamed of the name above every name, this is your hour to rise. Let the watchers watch, let the sleepers sleep, but let the remnant arise. The last sign is here. The countdown has begun. The world moves on as if nothing has changed. Markets rise and fall, nations posture, people chase pleasure, but in the unseen realm, a shift has occurred. A prophetic marker has been released into time, one that does not whisper but thunders. It is the final sign before the trumpet sounds, a divine confirmation that the age is drawing to its conclusion. For those who dwell in the flesh, it appears as another event among many. But for those who walk by the Spirit, it is a seal, a signature of the Most High, a sign that the door is beginning to close. From the beginning, God has spoken through signs. The rainbow after the flood, the burning bush before deliverance, the star that marked the birth of Messiah, heaven has always declared what men ignored. And now in these final days, another sign has appeared. It is not born of man's imagination or hysteria. It aligns with Scripture, echoes the patterns of ancient prophecy, and bears the fragrance of eternity. It is as if heaven itself has stretched forth a hand and drawn a final line in the sands of time. This sign did not arrive in silence. It was preceded by tremors, warnings sent like waves before a coming storm. The earth has groaned, the heavens have shaken, and the nations have stumbled. Apostasy has swept across churches like a plague. Truth has fallen in the streets, mocked and discarded. And in the midst of this shaking, the final harbinger has emerged. Its timing is not accidental. It comes just before a prophetic threshold, just before July 10, 2025, a date not randomly chosen, but divinely allowed. A countdown has begun not according to calendars of man, but according to the clock of eternity. Many will miss it, just as they missed the signs in the days of Noah, just as they were blind in the days of Lot, just as Jerusalem missed the hour of its visitation. But for those who have eyes to see, this is not a moment of fear. It is a call to prepare. The trumpet is not yet heard by the world, but the sound is already stirring in the spirit of the bride. A holy urgency, a divine stirring, a trembling that comes not from chaos, but from proximity to glory. What once stood as a whisper in the wind has now become a storm in the sky. The harbingers, those prophetic signs, those divine echoes of warning have already sounded. They were not given to entertain, but to awaken. They were not merely symbolic gestures of a distant God, but precise, timed messages sent to alert a generation asleep at the wheel. And now we stand in a moment not of foreshadowing, but of fulfillment. The time of warning is giving way to the time of reckoning. What was once prophetic imagery is now unfolding reality. Years ago, these harbingers began to appear linked to ancient patterns, rooted in the judgment of nations, revealed not just in words, but in events. Economic collapses, breaches in national defense, foundational shakings, and voices calling a nation to return. All these mirrored the ancient judgments upon Israel before her fall. But those who saw them as fleeting, those who explained them away or mocked them as coincidence, did not realize that the warnings of God are not void. They do not fade with time, they deepen, and when they go unheeded, they give birth to fulfillment. We have now entered that hour. The signs have moved from the periphery to the center. What was once symbolic is now tangible. Where once there were tremors, now there are shakings. What was whispered in secret is now shouted from the rooftops. A culture that once flirted with rebellion now celebrates it. What was once gradual has become sudden. Moral decay has escalated into confusion. Lawlessness has turned into legislation. That which God called evil is now exalted, and those who once bore the warnings in tears now behold them in real time. It is no longer enough to study prophecy. We are walking in it. It is no longer a future event. It is present reality. And to those with discernment, the air itself feels charged. The atmosphere has shifted. There is a weight, a divine pressure, a sense that we are not watching history unfold but eternity approach. The harbingers have spoken, and the voice behind them is now moving. But God does not reveal without purpose. If the harbingers have transitioned into fulfillment, it is not only judgment that is at the door. It is redemption. For every shaking is both a warning and an invitation. The same God who allowed the harbingers to be seen is the God who calls even now for hearts to return. The fulfillment of warning is not merely an end. It is a call to revival. It is a call to repentance, to consecration, to readiness. We have crossed a threshold. The season has changed. The shadows have become substance. And the cry of the watchman is no longer, "The signs are coming," but rather, "The signs are here." Now is the hour to decide, will we fall with the world, or rise with the remnant? The time for delay has passed. The harbingers have spoken. Now comes the fulfillment. There are moments in history that carry more weight than others, moments not determined by man, but set by the hand of the Eternal. These are the tipping points, the divine thresholds when the patience of heaven meets the resistance of earth. And one such moment stands before us now. Before July 10, 2025, something is shifting in the unseen realm. A line has been drawn by God Himself, not on maps, not in politics, but in time. a boundary that marks the end of warning and the beginning of fulfillment, a spiritual tipping point beyond which the course of nations and destinies may be altered forever. This is not about a single date or the superstition of calendars. This is about the convergence of signs, the culmination of warnings, the acceleration of prophetic movements. For years, the Spirit has whispered to the remnant. For decades, the warnings have increased. Yet still, the world slumbers. Still, the church plays, but heaven does not wait for earth's approval. God's purposes are not delayed by man's distractions. When he draws a line, it is to mark a shift, a season ending and another beginning. The tipping point is not sudden. It builds like pressure beneath the earth, layer upon layer, until the fault line breaks. The signs have come one after another, wars and rumors of wars, the falling away, the blurring of good and evil, the persecution of the righteous, the silencing of truth, and the bold celebration of darkness. But now the pressure has reached its limit. The clock of heaven is nearing the hour, and what comes after this point may not resemble anything we've known before. God always gives a window, a moment to repent, a season to return. But those windows are not eternal. They open with mercy, but they close with justice. The tipping point before July 10, 2025 is not merely a warning. It is a door. It is an appointed moment in which decisions are made in heaven based on what is chosen on earth. Will the church awaken or continue in slumber? Will nations bend the knee or mock his name? Will the people of God return to the altar or continue to dance around golden calves? What happens beyond this threshold can shake kingdoms, shift governments, upend economies, and release judgment. Or it can birth revival, usher in awakening, and open the floodgates of glory. The choice lies not in the halls of power, but in the chambers of the heart. A remnant must rise. Intercession must increase. Consecration must deepen. For if we miss this moment, we may not find another like it again. The midnight hour is not approaching. It has arrived. The cry has gone forth across the heavens, not in the voice of men, but in the voice of the Spirit. The sound is not heard by all ears, but those attuned to the whisper of the Almighty know it well. It is the call of the bridegroom, the announcement that he is near, that his footsteps are drawing closer with every passing moment. And yet the question remains, when he comes, will the bride be ready, or will she be found asleep? This is not a time for casual faith or passive religion. It is not a time for entertainment, driven services, or lukewarm devotions. This is the hour of oil. The hour when lamps must be trimmed, when hearts must be burning, when garments must be washed and made white. For the delay has tested many, and sleep has overtaken more than we care to admit. The church has slumbered while the world has descended into darkness, but the cry has come, and now the bride must awaken. There is no more room for complacency. The days of borrowed fire are over. Each believer must carry their own flame, their own oil, their own consecration. It will not be enough to point to sermons or songs or affiliations. The question will be asked, were you watching? Were you waiting? Were you faithful when no one else was looking? For the bridegroom is not returning for a people entangled in the world, but for a bride who has made herself ready, who is set apart, purified, and longing for his appearing. This is not the cry of fear. It is the call of love, a love that compels preparation, a love that fuels endurance, a love that cannot be content with the world because it is homesick for eternity. The midnight cry is a test not just of alertness, but of affection. What do we long for more? The pleasures of Egypt or the promise of the promised land? The comfort of compromise or the fire of holiness? The praise of men or the approval of the bridegroom? The church was never meant to blend in with the culture. She was called to shine, to pierce the night with the light of truth. But when she sleeps, the darkness deepens. When she wakes, revival comes, and the cry is sounding now. Not later, not eventually, but now. It resounds in the spirit of every believer who has not bowed their knee to Baal, who has not sold their birthright for the stew of this world, who still believes in the soon return of the King. There is a remnant rising, not chosen by popularity, not gathered by platforms, but drawn by the Spirit of the living God. They are not the loudest, nor the most celebrated. Many are hidden, unknown to the world, but fully known in heaven. They are the ones who have refused to bow when others did, the ones who stood while others compromised, the ones who wept when truth was trampled and burned with holy fire when others grew cold. And to this remnant the call is going forth. You were born for this hour. This is not a mistake. You are not here by chance. You are not enduring the shaking as a victim, but as one who has been appointed to stand in the gap, to carry the fire, to prepare the way. The shaking that surrounds us is not the conclusion. It is the prelude. It is the breaking of the old wineskin, the tearing down of idols, the removal of every crutch and counterfeit, so that what remains is pure, unshakable, and eternal. The shaking is violent, yes, but it is holy, and it is necessary. We are walking through the furnace, not to be consumed, but to be refined. The fire that surrounds us is the fire that reveals us. The remnant does not run from it. They embrace it. For they know that glory only follows fire, that resurrection only follows crucifixion, that the oil only flows when the olive is crushed. These are not just poetic truths. They are the reality of the remnant. And this is their hour. The world sees chaos, but the remnant sees convergence. The world sees breakdown, but the remnant sees birthing. For they carry not just the weight of survival, but the mantle of purpose. They are the intercessors in the secret place, the watchmen on the wall, the voice crying in the wilderness. They are those who have refused to be silenced by fear or seduced by comfort. Their hearts burn, their knees are worn, and their eyes are lifted to the hills from whence comes their help. You are not born in another generation because you were not made for another generation. You were born now, in this hour, because your calling matches the urgency of the time. You are forged for pressure. You are anointed for resistance. You are crafted in the fires of preparation because the glory to be revealed requires vessels that will not crack under the weight. And while many seek escape, the remnant seeks encounter. While many run to blend in, the remnant rises to stand out. This is the call, not to everyone, but to you. The shaking is not to scatter you, but to align you. Not to break you, but to reveal what cannot be broken. You were born for this hour, not to cower in fear, but to carry His presence. Not to spectate history, but to help fulfill prophecy. The trumpet is sounding, the heavens are watching, and the King is returning. Stand, remnant, the hour has come. Heaven is calling, not with the soft tones of suggestion, but with the clarion sound of urgency, a call that transcends language and culture, moving through the fabric of time with holy intensity. It is not the voice of man, but the breath of God, stirring hearts and waking souls from slumber. And as heaven calls, the earth trembles beneath the weight of divine movement. The shaking is not accidental, it is prophetic. The ground itself responds when God draws near. What we are witnessing is not chaos, but convergence. A holy alignment between heaven and earth, calling all things to their appointed place before the curtain of time is drawn closed. The trembling of the earth is not something to fear. It is something to discern. It is a signal that the eternal is pressing into the temporary. The kingdoms of man are being tested. The structures of pride are being shaken, and the idols of culture are crumbling. All that can be shaken is being shaken, not to destroy, but to reveal what is unshakable. The systems trusted by generations are proving frail. The voices once revered are fading. The illusion of control is vanishing. And yet, in the midst of it all, heaven's voice grows louder. Time is fading, not in a poetic sense, but in a prophetic one. The clock of eternity is not measured in minutes, but in moments. And we are in a moment of divine convergence. The sands in the hourglass are slipping through faster than many realize. What once seemed distant is now at the door. Prophecies once whispered are now shouting. The days are not only numbered, they are accelerated. And yet, the mercy of God remains, beckoning his people to return, to respond, to realign. This is not alarmism. Alarmism is rooted in fear. This is alignment rooted in truth. The Spirit is not stirring panic, but preparation. Not dread, but discernment. To ignore the signs is not faith. It is blindness. To reject the shaking is not peace. It is deception. Heaven is not silent. Creation is not still, and time is not waiting. Every tremor, every shift, every divine disruption is a summons to awaken, to prepare, to come out from among the noise and walk in step with eternity. Those who hear the call must not delay. Those who feel the tremble must not ignore it. This is a holy moment. A moment when destinies are forged, when choices echo into forever, and when the remnant is called to arise. The fear of the Lord must return, the altars must be rebuilt, the lamps must be filled. For heaven is calling not just the church, but individuals calling you, calling now. We have reached the end of the message, but not the end of the moment. What has been spoken is not a distant theory or theological idea. It is the sounding of a trumpet. It is the voice of urgency birthed in the womb of eternity. The last sign has appeared. The final warning has been given. And heaven has begun to stir the earth with holy shaking. What was once prophetic foresight has become present fulfillment. The harbingers have spoken, the line has been drawn, the cry has gone forth, and the tipping point is now upon us. Before July 10, 2025, we are standing in a divinely appointed window. This is not a date to fear, but a moment to prepare. It is not about panic, but purpose. It is a season where heaven calls for decision, where the line between compromise and consecration is being drawn not in sand, but in spirit. Those who are called must arise. Those who are chosen must respond. This is the hour for the remnant, not the comfortable, not the casual, but the consecrated. The church must wake up. The bride must be found ready. The lamps must be filled. The garments must be pure. We cannot sleep while heaven calls. We cannot blend in while eternity beckons. The cry of the bridegroom is not a whisper. It is a roar. And those who have ears to hear must rise from their slumber, for the King is not delaying. He is coming, and his reward is with him. Everything that can be shaken is being shaken not to destroy us, but to prepare us, not to paralyze us, but to position us. The shaking is not the end. It is the doorway to glory. The systems of man will fail. The idols of comfort will fall. But those who are rooted in him will not be moved. The time is no longer tomorrow. It is now. The call is no longer general. It is personal. This is not just a prophetic message. It is a personal summons from the throne of heaven. Heaven is calling. Earth is trembling. Time is fading. You were not born in this hour by accident. You were placed here by divine purpose. You were chosen to carry the fire, to stand in the gap, to lift your voice, and to prepare the way. This is your assignment. This is your moment. The line has been drawn. The midnight cry has sounded. The final sign has appeared. What will you do with this moment? Will you ignore it like so many have in generations past? Or will you rise like Esther, like Elijah, like the forerunners of old who knew that when heaven calls, nothing else matters? This is not about headlines. It's about heaven's heart. It's not about fear. It's about faithfulness. The final call is being made. Let the remnant arise. Let the bride prepare. Let every heart return. For the King is at the door, and the time is now.